In looking at page 8 and page 9 of your report, you talk about the knowledge that the voters would have versus taxation in other states. And I see you reference Texas as one of the very few states that is actually lower than ours. And also that the percentage of people that thinks that income taxes is too high has dropped by 7%. If I read that right. Have you ever polled the question of the abolishing of the state income tax may make Louisiana more competitive with Texas? And do you think there's a small possibility that perhaps some of these people that perceived income taxes as too high, to use your analogy about a set of parents, we're stuck with the ones we're born with, but maybe they said, I got a better set of parents in Texas, and they're no longer residing in the state of Louisiana?
Okay, so a few points there. The question, I think the main question there is, have we asked about the overall, essentially like connecting ideas about, particularly the income tax, to other states, and what people think about whether or not things are better in other states in terms of taxes, and if that might shape not only the responses to these questions, but also the decisions they make about what's the better state to live in, operate businesses in. Just a quick point of clarification: the attitudes towards the state's income tax didn't change much from last year to this year. That 7-percentage point shift mentioned in the question has to do with an experiment we conducted, in which we wanted to know what people knew about taxes, the tax burden in Louisiana, and whether or not knowing or not knowing that information mattered. So we asked, how does this overall state and local tax burden in Louisiana compare to other states? Not compared in the sense of whether or not you personally like it, but compared just in an objective sense. Is it higher or lower than most states? Well, the objective measures are that at least compared to most states, and there are other dimensions you can debate about what the right level of tax burden is. But in comparison to other states, Louisiana's ranks fairly low, 45th, 47th, somewhere in that. I think it's 45th. There's 5 states who are lower, including, as this gentleman pointed out, Texas, our neighbor to the west. And most people don't know that. Only about 20% of folks knew that Louisiana's overall state and local tax burden is less than most other states. A lot of people just didn't know at all, and like, I don't know, and said the same. And then 40% said it was high, which is objectively incorrect. Again, this is not a question about if you like the tax burden, or whether or not you think the tax burden should be lower or higher, or should be, or is too high or too low compared to some other metric. This is specifically about a metric compared to other states. Whatever you might normally think about that, compared to other states, is it higher or lower? About 40% of people think it's higher, even though the opposite is true. So there's a fair degree of folks who are either uninformed or misinformed on this issue. So what we want to do is find out if that matters. And so we split our sample and conducted the experiment, polled some people, cited this study from the Tax Foundation, and said, here's this information. So by the way, what do you think about income tax? What do you think about sales tax? And we compare people into 2 groups, right? It's just like a medical test. Some people, based on random assignment, get some information, some people don't. Their responses compare them and contribute to differences in the information. It turns out the information did not make a big difference, but it did make a modest difference. Folks were less likely to say that income tax is too high, but interestingly enough, more likely to say, less likely to say the income tax is too high, also less likely to say the sales tax is too high. So it did adjust opinions of whether or not these taxes are too high down, but it didn't change opinions on whether or not they thought these taxes were too low. It just shifted people from too high to, yeah, that's about right. So like, tell people, well, we're at about the 45th, rank 45th, they'll be like, oh, well, I thought it was, well, okay, yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. So that seems true. Now, whether or not we ask people specifically about competitiveness against other states, we did not do that in this year's survey. And I would be clear that this experiment we did referenced a general comparison to other states, but specifics like Texas, while that's discussed in the text, were not mentioned in the question itself. I can tell you that a number of years ago, before my time at LSU, the Public Policy Research Lab at the Riley Center, it was when the former Governor Bobby Jindal, during his, I want to say his second term, the proposal, forgive me, I was not a resident of the state at the time, there was a proposal to potentially eliminate the state's income tax. That year, there was a battery of questions about opinions I would have to go back and look. I'd hesitate to say what overall opinion was. I'd be worried to mischaracterize. My sense is that there was not an overwhelming support for it, but I would want to go back and double check. However, those studies are all available online on our website. So they are all there to be found and used for.
Well, you kind of have a brief follow-up. You're correct. There was some research done. Bobby Jindal's proposal became rather, well, extremely complicated in having offsetting credits for broadening the sales tax base as a means to accomplishing the income tax abolition. But so you answered my question. I heard the word "we did not" in there, and I appreciate it. You gave far more specificity than I was expecting. So thanks.
It's the classic academic answer. I couldn't use 3 words, but instead I used 300.